From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Crop scouts prepare to scour the Corn Belt for a mid-season estimate of the crop.
I'm Michelle Rook. We'll look at yield prospects for the 2018 crop here in Minnesota. Details coming up.
USDA taps funds to help a struggling dairy industry. In agribusiness, are the corn lows in?
But when we look at the fundamentals, strictly the fundamentals moving forward, we probably are undervalued.
Certified sustainable beef is gaining traction, and researchers in California look for ways agriculture and nature can coexist.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. USDA says there's a record-sized soybean crop in the making this season. Likewise, there are record-sized corn yields being discovered across the Corn Belt. Is that true? The Pro Farmer Midwest Crop Tour expects to find some answers. The highly regarded and highly watched crop tour steps off this coming Monday. Teams of scouts will scatter across the Midwest from Ohio to Nebraska to gather more than 2,000 crop samples from both corn and soybean fields. Their routes cover approximately 70% of the primary corn growing region of the country. The Pro Farmer Tour relies on boots on the ground research to gauge crop conditions and potential yields from 7 states, comparing the results to last year's tour.
The main thing is they've always touted the idea that, look, we compare one crop tour to the prior crop year. We're not comparing how we look at or how USDA looked at the crops. We want to know what the comparison is from year to year on the crop tour. And that's the most important consistency with the crop tour data. You can use that to then make a judgment on whether or not USDA information is too high, too low, or just right.
Wilson will lead the tour on the western Corn Belt, covering parts of South Dakota and Nebraska, where USDA is projecting record corn yields. The scouts then travel to western Iowa and southern Minnesota. The latest USDA crop production report pegging soybean yields in Minnesota 2 bushels higher than last year at 49 bushels to the acre, while the agency lowered corn yield for the state by 3 bushels per acre compared to 2017 at 191 bushels. Michelle Rook, well, she talked to farmers across the state to see if they agreed with this projection.
The latest USDA crop production report projects lower corn yields in Minnesota than a year ago, and most of the farmers we talked to here in the state would agree. The corn yield potential has been pulled down by nitrogen loss and damage from heavy rains and flooding in parts of the state.
The southern tier of counties, southern 2-tier of counties along the I-90 corridor certainly was hurt by too much rainfall during the growing season.
The corn crop is really variable. It goes from 0 to not too bad, and so much of our corn is up and down and all yellow.
The crop has also been pushed with GDUs well ahead of average, which could hurt the fill.
We were as much as 12 days ahead of normal in terms of the month into June and July.
As a result, producers in those areas are expecting lower yields.
We're probably 30 bushel off what we planned. 210 was kind of the low end of the fields that we planned for production-wise. So, I'm really hopeful for 180, 185 farm averages.
As we harvest this fall, we're going to have corn from 0 to 250 and on the same round.
However, it's a tale of 2 crops with better potential to the north and east with more normal rainfall.
If I will go to the eastern side of the state, though, I think we have a lot that could be easily into that 200 bushel range or bigger.
Normally we're in that 170 to 175, we're really at the top end for an average, and right now I'm thinking we might be able to be in that 190 to 195.
However, that may not make up for the losses. Meanwhile, USDA is projecting soybean yields in Minnesota at 49 bushels per acre, up 2 bushels from 2017.
Our beans are neck high right now, so we're kind of in this pocket where everything's going pretty well.
We've got clusters growing on top. There's the blossoms there, and with this warm temps and the moisture we got, I'm hoping that we can be in that 55 to 60 bushel range, which is a very good bean crop for us.
But again, there are wet pockets that will have yields below 2017.
They're going to be down. We usually run around average in the 60s, but we're not going to get that this year because of the brownout and then the spots that didn't come right.
So with the high variability, the jury's still out on statewide yields until the combines roll this fall. In Minnesota, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Dairy farmers are getting a little help, and food banks across the country will be getting fresh milk thanks to a big purchase by USDA. The Ag Department announcing plans to buy 11 to 13 million gallons for $50 million. It will be distributed to food banks. The permanent appropriation called Section 32 allows the government to buy surplus ag products to assist farmers. This is the first time it's been used to buy liquid milk. As we've been reporting, hundreds of dairy farms have closed this year under tough economic pressure. Declining milk demand has created a glut of milk and lowered milk prices for farmers. The CEO of International Dairy Foods Association says this will help people on food benefits like SNAP get better access to milk.
There's nothing as nutritious as a glass of milk. Only 1 in 10 Americans are getting the recommended 3 servings a day of dairy. About nearly half the households, SNAP recipient households, have children.
The National Milk Producers Federation says the buy will help spur better market prices for the industry.
First of all, between 9 and 13 million gallons of fluid milk will be going to food banks, which is a critical need. Annually, only about a gallon per person per year is donated to of milk is donated to food banks. So having that milk in the pipeline to go to those food banks is critically important. Secondly, we'll have to wait and see how it impacts the market. But if all of that fluid milk, or a good portion of that fluid milk, comes out of cheese production, we could see a significant bump in CME cheese block prices and maybe barrel prices as well.
The Ag Department saying this purchase is not related to the emergency assistance for farmers linked to the recently announced tariff aid program. That's a separate program and helps farmers hurt by the trade dispute. Details of that plan are expected after Labor Day. The visitor gates are open again at Yosemite National Park's Scenic Valley. The park was closed for 20 days because of smoke from wildfires in the region. Some of the hikers and nature lovers say they don't mind the still hazy air that obscures scenic vistas. Park officials also advising visitors to expect limited lodging and food services at Yosemite, one of the busiest national parks in the U.S. Yosemite's closure came at the height of tourist season, costing the park and nearby communities millions of dollars. Now, the park draws more than 600,000 visitors during a typical August. Getting back to crop conditions, our own meteorologist Mike Hoffman. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. We're starting off in north central Texas. Austin Miles says he weaned his spring calf crop early as part of a drought mitigation plan. He says the area is dry and hopes to receive more moisture soon. An updated U.S. Drought Monitor will be released today. Speaking of rain, the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, tweeting, Will Rogers World Airport received 4.9 inches of rain Tuesday night, the highest daily rainfall for the month of August ever. The previous record was 4.6 inches back in 2008. Now, taking a look at the wind speed forecast, you can see a little bit of wind with that system in the lower Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, also down into Texas. As we head into the afternoon, those winds will increase in places, but it's really spotty. No widespread wind expected. Same idea tomorrow morning. And as we head through the rest of the day tomorrow, you can see it turns a little windier along the East Coast and a few spots in the plains. We'll have your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Advice, information, ideas, and more. If it's ag tech, it's in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop source for everything ag tech.
USDA thinks we're on pace for a record corn crop, but what about markets? Could the lows be in? We'll talk about that next in Agribusiness. And later, take a dip in these California streams as researchers look for ways to bridge the gap between agriculture and nature. In Agribusiness, what goes up can also come down. The grain market back in the red on Wednesday. Let's find out why from our friends on the floor.
Today, soybeans slipped a little bit. That recent large crop estimate really has cast a shadow over futures. Plus, that 25% tariff from China just keeps a stranglehold on prices, and there's really no end in sight. Corn was steady today. It seems like there's competing fundamental news that's kind of like stalled the prices out, so it hasn't really been going up or down and kind of like moving sideways a little bit. Today, cattle was rising. Those wholesale beef prices were higher today. They're climbing significantly and underpinning futures. Box demand is improving with choice up 121 and select up 161. And it's really starting to show some real signs of life and maybe getting the market starting to move a little bit higher. Feeders were also higher. It seems that momentum ahead is a real possibility. Now, hogs were steady today. They're consolidating in a very, very tight range. That really is good news that the market hasn't really, fallen off the edge. The trend is still lower. Even the short-term and the long-term trend is still lower. But those oversold conditions is kind of stopping the market from further sell-off. And the increased packer margins is starting to underpin the futures and really adding to the price support. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
As corn prices wallow around, there's some talk that markets are poised for a rebound. In analysis from the road, Tyne Morgan asked whether the lows are in.
Here now is Steve Georgie of Allendale. Steve, when we look at this corn market and we see the price fluctuations that we've had the past month, do you think that we've put a corn low in?
Of course you're going to ask me that. But yes, I feel that we probably have. And so when we look at what's going on, it's not just so much of where's the yields at, what kind of situation do we have on a fundamental side. It's also what is the media feeding us at this point. Are we getting to a point now where we're starting to hear some positive news, not just negative tariff talk and negative news that drives this market, and it was almost this panic and fear that had pushed us to the levels that we were at. But when we look at the fundamentals, strictly the fundamentals moving forward, we probably are undervalued. To get back to $350 for December corn, I think would be pretty tough to do right now. We're going to need to see some more negative media news in order to push us to those levels.
Steve, when we look at what's happened with the wheat market, I mean, do you think we could have something similar happen in the corn market if we do start to realize maybe there's some issues in some growing areas, not just in the U.S.?
Yeah, with the wheat, though, it's global, and so we need to look at that as a global scale. We know right now when we look at corn demand globally is extremely, we've got ending stocks, or I should say stocks to use globally are really tight. So will we continue to see this demand? Unlike wheat, though, wheat looks like we've got a friendly global picture, but we have a big supply of wheat. We need to see that the demand step up in order to really push us to that next level for wheat, but the charts look pretty good right now.
And for corn, though, you think that demand is there and it can stay there?
I do. I think that demand is there. I think it also becomes this where when you look at demand specifically, we're the ones holding all the cards. We have big yields. We know that. We've got a big crop coming again, but we've seen some issues around the globe, but we're the store. We're the ones to go to. So if we still see problems, I believe that demand is there, and we're going to need to deal with that in the future.
All right, Steve Georgie, thank you so much. Stay with us. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more here on Ag Day.
To talk to Steve Georgie one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-262-7538 or head online to allendale-inc.com.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here. Mike talked to some folks out in Oklahoma, and it sounds like they just got tons of rain in a short amount of time yesterday.
Yeah, and it's with this system, but it was obviously in an area of thunderstorms that just kept hitting the same spots. But this system has not really brought widespread heavy rains because you can see parts of it, even close to the area of low pressure, just not putting down much rain. This is this morning showing a lot of the moisture moving through the central Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley with just scattered activity to the north and northwest of the system. Now that does increase as we head through this afternoon as the afternoon heating gets going, but it's still more of a scattered situation rather than widespread soaking rains. You can see scattered thunderstorms down into the southeast and the hit and miss activity typical for this time of the year in the southwest. Heading into the morning hours tomorrow, we do have another cool front coming across the northern plains into the northern Great Lakes. That will dry things out as this whole system kind of moves off to the east, and it will push a lot of that moisture off to the southeast. You can see by later today, scattered showers and thunderstorms, southern portions of the Great Lakes, a little bit more along the first cold front though. From the southern Mississippi Valley into the mid-Atlantic states farther northward, and the hit and miss activity out west. One more cool front, not a big deal though at this point, coming through western Canada. Precipitation estimates over the past 24 hours, like I said, a lot of the moisture has been in the southern part of this system. So from Arkansas into the Ohio Valley over the past 24 hours, also decent amounts panhandle of Florida. Checking out the next 36 hours, you know, over the course of a 2.5-day period, a lot of areas do get 1 to 2 inches in the Ohio Valley, central Mississippi Valley, and then spotty areas elsewhere with lesser amounts, obviously, northern and western portions of the country. High temperatures this afternoon in the 90s, steamy from southern Kansas southward. Farther north, a little more comfortable air, but still warm. You can see lots of lower 80s across the Corn Belt. Low temperatures tonight going to drop off into the a few 50s, but mainly 60s across the northern plains. But from Chicago southward, still kind of muggy, 70 plus in those areas. High temperatures tomorrow. The 90s get shoved a little bit farther south with that front coming through, but it's still warm, like I said, behind that front, just not as humid across the northern and central plains. A little bit of a trough with that system moving through. You can see that on the jet stream. That moves on by. A bigger trough looks like it's trying to dig in as we head into next week. Eventually does on our computer model by the middle of the week, and that'll bring a shot of cooler air to the Great Lakes and the northeast. Ridge still continues, though, southwest northward. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Needles, California. First of all, a mixture of clouds and sunshine and hot. High of 106. Huron, South Dakota, partly sunny, a thunderstorm or two pretty likely, high of 81. And Greenville, South Carolina, partly sunny, hot and humid, high of 92.
We'll check on the cattle industry and a sustainability project after the break, and later, fish or cattle. It doesn't have to be one or the other, according to researchers. We're off to the Golden State for a deep dive into the search for answers.
Don't miss the 2018 Farm Progress Show, August 28th through August 30th in Boone, Iowa. Visit farmprogressshow.com for more information and to purchase tickets online.
From our partners over at Drovers, Cargill says more than 1 million pounds of beef was produced during the third quarter of its Canadian Beef Sustainability Pilot Project. That project set out to deliver a consistent supply of beef from certified sustainable sources. In a statement, the company says volumes nearly doubling from the first quarter to the third. And during the third quarter, participating Canadian producers earned credits of $18.52 per head.
Cargill says a growing number of Canadian beef cattle producers are completing the steps necessary to qualify for the pilot, with the overarching goal of enabling retail and food service participants to consistently offer a supply of beef from certified sustainable sources to consumers.
The standards were recently developed by the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. The effort follows a project that ended back in 2016 where McDonald's Canada collaborated with Cargill and other supply chain stakeholders to demonstrate the viability of this type of program. Reaching environmental goals doesn't mean an either-or solution. We'll see how researchers in California are looking for sustainable answers in the state's waterways.
In the Country, sponsored by the all-new Kubota Sidekick, a utility vehicle that lets you climb more, cover more, tow more, and enjoy more. Visit KubotaUSA.com.
While California is dealing with historic wildfire, research continues in the state on ways to keep and create sustainable landscapes, and that often means finding balance between nature and agriculture, as seen in this video from UC Davis.
The thing that's so exciting about this stream is that it's showing us that there's a new path forward when we want to think about making our rivers better. You know, a lot of people think about restoration like we have to move people off, we have to stop cattle ranching, we have to stop agriculture. You know, but this river exists like this in the middle of an active cattle ranch. So that tells us that there's a place for people in the solution. In this case, we're trying to help recover a particular species of salmon that lives in the Shasta River, coho salmon.
Salmon, as we know them, have been around for at least 50 million years. They have weathered extreme events throughout that history, earthquakes, mega droughts, floods. And the reason they're able to persist is because some die off during tough times, others hang on. The species as a whole can persevere into the future. Today, we don't have that diversity.
One of the problems that salmon are facing is there just aren't that many of them anymore. And at the same time, there's more people and less water. So as time goes on, it becomes harder to find that perfect place where we get to share the water with all the people who need it, as well as the fish who need it to survive. To solve these problems, we need a lot of basic information. So the science that we do is to answer questions about how much water is in the stream. That tells us how much water we have to work with. What temperature is the water? That tells us if it's good water for fish or good water for irrigation. What kind of habitat exists here? You know, what kind of deep, slow pools where the fish can slow down and grow? What kind of food is here? So all of that information is data we're collecting when we come out into the fields and sample bugs or measure stream flow or measure water temperature. Being in places like this helps me feel like my soul has been plugged in. Places like the Little Shasta speak to the people's souls who have lived here all of their lives and for many generations. Being able to preserve it and pass it on to future generations, is important to them. There are solutions that can help us maintain the environment and maintain our own, not just livelihoods, but heritage.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. It's been part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.